Yes, industry can contribute. In fact, it must contribute to climate mitigation. Currently, about 20% of our emissions in the EU every year come from the industrial production of basic materials. About 70% of those emissions come from a small set of crucial basic materials, which are very CO2 intensive. We're talking about steel, cement, aluminium, and basic chemicals, most of which are used to produce plastics. Those emissions come from effectively two sources. The first source is the energy that's used to transform those raw materials into basic materials, but also from the chemical processes that occur for the transformation of raw materials. So we can tackle it, but we have to attack both elements at once. To make the transition to climate neutral industry happen, we need to do three things. Firstly, we need to use materials more efficiently. So we need to design products and build products in a way that is a lot less materials intensive, including through using recycled materials much better. We also need to decarbonize the energy we use in industry, particularly through using renewable electricity instead of fossil fuels. As part of that process, we also need to deploy new climate neutral breakthrough technologies that allow us to produce very CO2 intensive materials with next to no carbon emissions. And so those are the three main strategies, but for the residual emissions that we can't abate with those three strategies, then we have to use carbon capture and storage. There is a business case for producing low carbon materials in the long run. In the long run, consumers will increasingly demand that the products they buy are sustainable. At the moment, there are niche markets providing a business case for climate neutral and circular basic materials. And we need to scale up much more in the near future. So we need policies and regulations that can actually provide that business case in the interim. How can we do this? Well, first of all, we need to support the deployment of key breakthrough technologies, which are often more expensive than the conventional carbon-intensive technologies. The second thing we can do is to create lead markets. So we can improve product labeling and transparency on the embedded carbon in products to incentivize consumers and supply chain managers to purchase cleaner alternatives. And then the third thing we need to do to create lead markets is to provide a pathway to scale up. So lead markets are good to sort of kickstart a certain technology, but ultimately we need the mass market penetration of low carbon solutions. And so to do that, we have to start to think about regulations on the embedded carbon in products that have a large amount of basic materials. So we can think about buildings, vehicles, packaging, for example, as products where we regulate how much carbon is allowed in the materials. So there are a lot of benefits to a strong policy framework to support the transition to climate neutral industry in Europe. One of the key benefits, obviously, is that we can safeguard jobs and production in Europe. During the next 10 years, a large share of our industrial capacity will need major new reinvestment. And if we don't reinvest into green and sustainable solutions, there is a risk that the long-term competitiveness of these assets will be put into question. There are also benefits for the local environment in terms of reduced air pollution from using less fossil fuels in industry. And then we also have benefits in terms of promoting innovation and new value chains that will be those value chains of the future in which the EU wants to be competitive. And then finally, we also, I think, will have an interest over the coming years of using our resources more efficiently and using more recycled resources so that we don't rely too much on foreign supplied raw materials for our industrial production. So this is the reason why we need a European Green Deal that delivers during this Commission for industry, such that it can start to make these investments today. And we need a clean industry package, effectively, from the European Green Deal.